In the final episode of the Marty Smith interview, Marty talks about how he lost his Honda contract, how dangerous motocross tracks have become, and how he wished two-strokes could come back into fashion.
The original point of this book was kind of to reminisce and talk about why the 80s was so cool. And everybody you talk to, I mean, literally, even younger riders these days, all kind of get glassy-eyed when they talk about the 80s and your era, the later 70s too. What do you, from your point of view, what made that period so special, so different, do you think?
It was almost an era of innocence. You know, we were the pioneers in the 70s and even into the early 80s. You know, as far advanced as the guys in the 80s were over us, they were still pioneers compared to the guys that came out in the 90s. So it's kind of like a cycle. It evolves every decade or every few years or however many years it takes to evolve from the riders' skill levels to the suspension on the motorcycles, the engines, the effort that each factory's putting in, the TV, the coverage that you have now online and every week, every race is on TV. We didn't have that back in the days. I mean, it's crazy how it's evolved. So I would say that it's just been the innocence, how it started, and we were the pioneers, the 70s pioneers, the 80s pioneers, and even the 90s pioneers. All these guys are pioneers, and now we're in the 2000s. We're up 2020s in 2 months. Are you kidding me? 2020. It was over 40 years ago that I started winning my first championships. It's like, wow. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the sport. What I'm not a fan of is how dangerous the tracks have turned into. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of these crazy rhythm sections that they're putting in, and some of the jumps and the downsides are damn near straight up and down. These guys got to just be so precise. And these guys nowadays, they're really technical. They have to be technical, but I would like to see them tame these tracks down a little bit because, David, if you look at the last 10 years, a third of the top riders are hurt by halfway through the season. Why is that? Well, it's because the tracks are out of hand. The bikes are so good, and they're making the tracks so gnarly that these kids have to do crazy things on these motorcycles to be competitive and to win. And they're riding out of their comfort zone. And these bikes are so stiff to get through the gnarly sections that if they get into a section and they get a little out of shape and they get off the throttle and their speed comes down a little bit, the bikes aren't made to go that slow, and they're so stiff it bucks them right over the bars, and next thing you know, they're in the hospital. So that's a downer for me, and I know it is for a lot of the guys from back in the day to see all these the different track changes and how many guys are getting hurt. The tracks are just too dangerous nowadays.
You said an interesting thing then. You said the young riders are riding outside the comfort zone. Do you not feel like you were riding outside your comfort zone back in the day?
Nope, I did not. I can honestly tell you, I was a rider that rode very methodically. I was a thinker, and I did not ride out of my comfort zone. Now, if I sit here and said I never rode out of my comfort zone, that might be a little bit of BS that Weinert or Hannah might be used to. So yeah, I probably did ride out of my comfort zone now and then, but I didn't make a habit of it. It was not my style.
But you probably watched Hannah ride outside his comfort zone. Or maybe he was comfortable right there.
I think he was comfortable. That was his comfort zone. It was different than my comfort zone. That was just Bob. That's how he rode. And he got so damn good at it that some of the positions that he would put himself into, there ain't no way any other rider could hang on to a motorcycle. But Bob did, because Bob was used to it.
Do you think, I mean, was it you pushing him that made him do that, or was that just naturally Bob out of control?
Well, I don't know. Bob will tell you, and I hope you get to interview Bob. Bob will tell you. Nobody could tell you. Nobody could speak for him. I just know that Bob was used to riding like that. Now I know that later in Bob's career, after I had already retired, Bob settled down, and Bob was getting to a point where he didn't ride with his feet over his head too much anymore, and he realized that maybe I got to stay on two wheels. I don't want to get hurt. But I can tell you, back in the beginning days when him and I were battling, he was all over the place. But that was just Bob Hanna. Nobody even thought twice about it. That was just Hanna.
But the fact that he was all out of control and sideways and legs everywhere, that must have changed kind of the way you approached it. It must have been, you had to kind of keep your distance from some of that, right?
You know what? I did have to keep my distance when I was around Bob, when we were on the track real close. Sometimes he'd hit something and his back and would come over and it'd be right in on my crossbar of my motorcycle. I'm thinking, you son of a bitch, did he do that on purpose? But no, he didn't. That was just Bob. That was just Bob. And the guy could hang on to that motorcycle in just about any situation. I give that guy so much credit. I mean, I really do. And I have such a respect for Bob, because Bob did what nobody else could do back in the day. Bob was paid to come up and beat me. I was on a far superior motorcycle than everybody else was until Bob came up, and Bob came up and did his job for Yamaha. And yeah, I have nothing but respect for the guy.
Yeah. Well.
That son of a bitch.
What's the biggest regret in your career, riding career? What was was it just not winning that 250 championship, or what did you regret most?
You know what? Nope, it wasn't that at all. The biggest regret that I have was after 1979, or during the 79 season, I hired an agent to do all my contract negotiations with American Honda. And back in the day, nobody had agents. All these football players and baseball players did, but no motocross guys did. And I hired an agent, a sports agent, and he's going to get all this money for me, and it's going to be a bitchin' contract, and I'm going to have all these lucrative benefits that I've never had before. And I took him into the negotiations with American Honda, and all it did is it pretty much ruined my career with Honda. Honda did not like that. They did not take a liking to that. They thought it was rude that I brought somebody in to do my negotiations for me, and that was the end of my career for Honda. So if there's any one regret, that's my regret, that I hired an agent to do my negotiations with Honda. That is absolutely my biggest regret, my only regret in my career.
You think you would have carried on with Honda some more? And
yeah, I do.
won some more?
I really do, because I still had the skill, and I didn't have quite the drive, but I think that mentally, when I lost my ride with Honda, that took a lot out of my drive and my passion. And I think that if I didn't have that agent, and I would have had a more private one-on-one negotiation with Honda, I think we could have worked it out, and I would have had another couple years with Honda. I think it would have been better.
And you'd have got to work with Roger DaCosta then too.
Yeah.
And thinking of that, who taught you the most? During your career, who did you learn from? Who was the guy that you look back on and say, he showed me a lot of stuff?
David, I learned a lot from every other guy that was out there. I can't pinpoint one guy that I learned from. Our era of motocross, there was so many fast guys. There was 15 guys that could win on any given day. You're talking Howerton, Stackable, Sammix, Croft, Tripes, Ellis, Hanna. The list goes on and on and on. And excuse me if I didn't mention your name out there. You guys know who you were. There was 15, maybe even more guys that could win. And I'd watch these guys each week, and I learned from every one of them. Whether things to do or things not to do. Yeah, I can't say that there was any one guy that made an impact on my life, my career. No.
What about riding in Europe? Did that teach you anything that you didn't already know?
It taught me that I never want to go back to Europe again. I didn't like it over there. I didn't like the food. I was too young. I didn't mature enough. While I was there. Go get him. Must be Hannah down there trying to get in and sneak in this interview. You know what? There was. I didn't like the food. We were struggling with our bikes in '76, and I was homesick when I got there. I had to bring my back then girlfriend, my now wife. I had to bring her over there to settle me down, and I don't see how she put up with my annex over there. I was just a big baby. I hated the food. I did nothing but complain. So yeah, I didn't like Europe.
But you must have learned something from riding A, the tracks, and B, against different guys.
Yeah, I learned that that besides Joel Robert, Roger DeCoster, there was a whole lot of other Europeans that were really good. You know, there was a lot of guys. I mean, there was guys I was riding against from Japan, from England, from Russia, from Czech. I mean, there was guys from all over the world competing in that European class in the GPs, and I learned how they were so friendly. It wasn't these guys that I thought were going to be so mean and going to take me out in the first turn. These guys were super cool. They were playing frisbee during the week, and I remember one time Nancy and I went from our home base, Honda's home base in Germany, and we went over to the other side of, I believe it was East Germany, and got on a boat, and we're going to go across the Black Sea or the Baltic Sea, one of those seas, and get over into the to Finland. We were going to land in Finland, and we were going to race the next GPs in Finland and in Norway. And we got there to the boat dock, and I see all the Russian guys out there and the Czechoslovakian riders. They were all out there and they were playing frisbee. And I told Nancy, I said, man, look at those guys. You know, I don't know. I was so intimidated by these guys. But by the end of the day, we were all playing frisbee together and joking around and having a beer. It's like they were the coolest group of guys that I ever could imagine. And I was so intimidated by these guys originally, but they were just so down to earth and they were so friendly. I learned all these different cultures and how friendly they really were. It was crazy. It was bitching.
Yeah, because it's interesting listening to DeCoster and others talking about, you know, to modern day motocross nations. All of a sudden we're getting our butts kicked in the motocross nations, and people saying, well, yeah, because all the American riders kind of ride in a supercross style, all revs, high revs, screaming and stuff, and you know, going is a lot harder and really hard braking, and Europeans are, you know, kind of changing gear, upshifting, and
They're flowing
through the racetrack. Was it different for you back then in that same way? I mean, was there a different style of riding in Europe that you kind of picked up on?
No, I think the biggest difference that I had to get used to was the tracks were quite a bit rougher in Europe. They didn't spend a lot of time grooming them. They would let them get rough for months and months and months before the GP would show up there. And then the GP, all they would do is throw some grass seed on it for a few weeks and then open the track for Saturday practice. And it was rough sons of bitches. It was rough, way rougher than what we rode on over here.
Did that help you when you came back here?
Oh, yeah.
Riding on all these flat tracks?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you had to be, I'm guessing you had to be fitter to ride on those rougher tracks too. I mean, physically fitter.
You did, and some of the tracks kicked my asses over there, you know. Some of the tracks kicked my ass. They were really rough, and, you know, I had to learn to, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about motoring the bike. We struggled in '76 with that bike, though. As I said, that bike wasn't the best bike out there, so we made a lot of changes on that bike, and some of the changes we made were worse. Some were maybe better, but we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot of changes that would actually be advantageous to us in '76.
Back back in the early days of your career, well, all the way through your career, you were kind of this superstar, you know, the golden head, whatever. I mean, you're the poster child. You became pretty much the poster child for motocross for quite a few years there. Was that something you felt pressure on, or was it something that was in any way a disadvantage to you?
I don't think so. I didn't think about all the things that were going on in my career when they were going on. I was focused on my job and going racing during racing each weekend and testing during the week, practicing during the week, doing whatever I could do to be in the best shape I could be in, and physically and mentally. And I never did. I looked at all the magazines, Cycle News, Motocross Action, and Dirt Rider, all these magazines and stuff. But I didn't dwell on it. I would look at these photos and look at the articles, and once I put the book down, I forgot about it. I put them out of my mind, and I didn't dwell. I didn't focus too much on that stuff because I think maybe it would screw me up. I don't know. I didn't think back then deliberately, let's don't dwell on it. I think that mentally I just didn't want to go there. I was just so busy on my focus on training and being better than everybody else and doing more than everybody else. I didn't have time to sit and dwell on all the cool shit that was going on. Now I look back on it and I try to dwell on it for the best of my memory can recall. But no, back in the day I didn't think about it. I just kept moving on from week to week.
If you were bringing up a young rider today to go and try and do what you did, what kind of advice, what things could you give that guy that would help him move up the ranks? What did you learn that still applies today to kind of moving up as a factory rider?
Well, there's a couple things. One of the simplest things that I did is coming up through the ranks, I never really looked on the start line at the back of the guys' jerseys and their names and numbers. I'd just get up to the start line, I'd find my spot, and I'd sit there and I'd focus. I'd focus on getting the whole shot, or thinking what I'm going to do and how long if I'm going to ride the first few laps hard and then kind of take it easy through the middle. I have a game plan. I'd work on my game plan. I didn't dwell on who was in the event. I think that as my career progressed and I started doing well, I think the best thing that I did was to spend more time on the motorcycle. And as we touched earlier in this interview, I think that there's a few guys that spend a lot of time on their motorcycles, and those are the guys that you see dominating, the Tomacs, the Villapotos, and maybe the Cincerello. These guys are spending a lot of time on their motorcycles, and a lot of guys, I think they take the easy way out. You know, they say, well, I'm going to ride the motorcycle maybe 2 days during the week, but I'm going to go on my street bike, my bicycle, and I'm going to put in 80 miles or 100 miles a week on that street bike, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to do this. But all that stuff's good. I'm going to say it's good, but cross training, you can only go so much with the cross training. You have to stay focused on that motorcycle. You have to be on that motorcycle predominantly every day, if not every day, every other day on that motorcycle. You have to be on that motorcycle. I'm a firm believer of that.
Back when you were doing, back in the John R. days and the Dave Arnold days, did you consider yourself a development rider? I mean, were you mechanically and savvy enough to figure out we need to go more compression damping and less rebound and all that kind of thing?
You know what? That's a question you'd have to ask Dave or John R. Are you going to be able to interview Dave?
I did. I have already.
Yeah, I don't remember how much input I actually gave Dave. Probably not a whole lot to John R. because that was in my early days and I didn't know nothing back then. I learned as I went. But I think that as Dave and I, as our careers and our relationship evolved, I think I learned a whole lot more of the suspension, of the jetting, and how the power band was. And I had a little bit of input, but not as much as I would like to have had. But I think that I learned a lot as it evolved, and I think as my career came to an end, I started to learn quite a bit, and it's helped me after my career quite a bit to help kids and some of the guys that I've been teaching in motocross schools. It's helped me help those guys.
Yeah. The motocross school, we'll get into that now. What is it you know for the cameras? What is it here? What is it you do there? And where do you do it? And how often?
You know, I'm kind of getting to where I think I'm done teaching. I'm still doing a little bit, but I don't advertise. As I said, I'm pretty much retired now. We have some property. My wife's retired from the Postal Service. She's got a nice little retirement, and I want to go into what I would consider would be our golden years and just start having fun. I still am teaching a little bit. As I said, I don't advertise. I enjoy it. I enjoy it when I've got a rider that wants to learn, because I have so much information I can pass on to anybody. And want to give that a minute?
Yeah,
It's going to take a minute for that guy to get by.
That's pretty loud.
Yeah. So I'll touch. I don't know if you want to touch any more on that or not.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. Yeah,
It's going to be another couple minutes. They're really slow.
Once they get parallel, they're pretty good. Quite quickly. Just check everything's still. Yeah. No, this one's shut off. So let me figure out. Okay. So I'll restart this in a minute. These things. That's why I use the big camera. These things shut off after 30 minutes. Just
Like a safety, like.
well, no, it's some weird battery thing they have going. So they just switch themselves off, and you have to restart them. So normally when I'm shooting all this stuff, I have an assistant with me, but he's away right now, and I just said, what the hell? I'll just do it on my own. Now we got a jet going in. All right, here we go. Let me see what we have on this one. So, going back to the school thing, has anybody come through your school who's gone on to do anything, special?
Well, yeah, of course. Jeremy McGrath was probably my biggest notoriety guy that came through back in before his career. He was a BMX kid. He went to one of my classes. I don't know if it was Saddleback or Carlsbad, but that was back in my early days of teaching. And I've had kids like Mike Craig and Tommy Clowers, and I can't even think of anybody else. But I just know that Jeremy was probably a kid that I would look up to now and say, yeah, what a good rider he was. And I'm proud to say that he came through one of my schools.
That's a pretty big name to have.
Pretty big name.
Right there.
Pretty big name.
Can you compare riders of today with, guys of your era? I mean, has the sport changed so much that it's kind of just different now, or can you compare how good guys are? Would like a McGrath would he have been successful back in your day? I mean,
Well, you know what? Sometimes you get these magazines that they'll have these questions. Take the best guy out of the best couple guys out of the 70s, best couple guys out of the 80s, out of the 90s, out of the early 2000s, and put them all together on a bike. Well, how do you do that? You just don't do that. But you've got standouts in every era. They're standouts.
Is there a common element? Is there some one thing that all those guys have that makes them stand out? You think?
Yeah, it's the desire. Who wants it the most? Guy who wants it the most is probably the guy that's going to win. You can have some guys. Jeff Stanton's a perfect example. He wasn't the most naturally talented rider out there, but Jeff won some championships because he had the desire. He wanted it worse than those guys back in the day. It just depends on how bad you want it. It depends on that's general life. How bad do you want to be good at what you're doing? How bad do you want to be the best? That'll tell you who's going to be the best, and how well you're going to do is show me your desire.
When you were back when you were traveling, doing the whole boxman thing, did you travel with John R. or Dave in the van, or were you flying?
I flew every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd fly in on Friday, get there Friday afternoon, check into the hotel, Saturday morning go to sign up, check the track out, hang out, cause trouble, thrash rental cars, and then go racing on Sunday, and sometimes fly home Sunday, fly home Monday.
So how many rental cars got trashed in the day?
Well, let's just say we ruined it for the kids nowadays. I'm surprised they can even rent cars nowadays. We would rent cars, and I remember there was this one weekend at Mid Ohio, and me and Moats and Warren Reed, we showed up and we did our sign up at Mid Ohio, and right next to the track they had this off-road race, and there were trucks and these weird things, weird buggy things, and just funky, anything that they could put dirt tires on, and they were racing them. So after sign up, me and Moats and Warren, we got in this Firebird or Camaro, whatever it was that I had rented, and we went over there and we jumped on the track, on this off-road track way in the back where nobody could see us. And we hopped on and we're just burning around this thing, and we're slinging mud everywhere, and this Camaro or this Firebird, whatever it was just getting thrashed. And we come to the end there, and there's a security guard. He's waving his arms, and he's going, "Hey," he goes, "You what are you guys doing? You can't do this. This is a closed event, and you got to have this, you got to have that." And we said, "Well, wait a minute. We want to sign up. Where do we sign up?" Okay, well, so we signed up. We ended up getting a third place trophy in this Camaro or Firebird, like I said, whatever the hell it was. And there was, yeah, and we got third place, got a third place trophy, and the car was so beat up. I took it to the car wash, washed it all up, and I took it back and turned it into Hertz, and made it look pristine, and told them that we weren't happy with the car, and that it wasn't really operating very well. And they gave us a nice brand new car, and that's just one of the crazy things we did in rental cars. We did a lot of crazy things with those cars. We'd be driving down the freeway. I remember there's one time with me and Brock and a couple of the other guys that were riding for Honda back in, it must have been 78 or 79, and we're in, I think we were in, I don't even remember, Michigan maybe. We're driving down the freeway going about 65 miles an hour in a station wagon, and I just put my foot into it, and then the car kicks down a gear and starts picking up speed, and I put it in reverse with my foot still on it, and the car starts slowing down a little bit and starts getting sideways, and the tires are burning rubber going 65 miles an hour down the freeway in reverse. And all of a sudden the car starts to get about sideways to the lane, and I jam it back down into drive, and the car goes and straightens right back out, and we're just laughing and just having a great old time, just beating the shit out of these rental cars. Got a great time. Amazing they still rent to motorcycle riders.
Yeah, well, I guess NASCAR drivers and NASCAR fans are even worse, but
I believe it.
because I remember going to Daytona and going to the Holiday Inn across from Daytona, and those guys going, "Oh, yeah, it's taken us 2 weeks to clean this place up so you guys can come in after the NASCAR race." So, yeah, it was, I guess they were even worse. Who was the craziest guy? Who was the crazy guy apart from you?
As far as?
Well, as far as rental cars and hotel rooms and all the other crap, the women, whatever.
Well, I think that we all had a little bit of craziness in us when it came to the rental cars and the hotels and thrashing rooms and working on the bikes in the rooms. And yeah, I mean, the girl thing, everybody had a little bit of piece of that, getting crazy. But I think that just like the sport, I think it's evolved now, and it's probably every bit as crazy when it comes to that sort of stuff now as it was back then. It's just a bunch of kids having fun.
I'm not sure that's true, Marty. I don't think anything's quite like it was back when you were doing it.
It might be. You might be right. I'm proud to say that we were part of of just starting that. I'm pretty proud to say that.
You were the pioneers.
Yeah, we were the pioneers of getting in trouble. I remember one time Rex Staten and I were sitting in a ravine alongside a freeway back east, and we were shooting bottle rockets at cars driving down the freeway. And we were just having a blast until all of a sudden they lit us up, and sirens and everything. Cops were right behind us with their guns drawn. Hey, get over there. They put us in the back of the car. They were going to arrest us. And thank God some guy had a heart attack in the hotel we were at, and they let us go. But that's just another one of the crazy things that we happened to be doing and got caught for.
Where were the team managers when all this was going on, or were they out there?
They weren't anywhere to be seen. Thank goodness.
Did you ever get in trouble with the factory for any?
No.
Never ever.
No.
To that point.
No.
Can you imagine racing without that crap happening?
No, I can't. When you get a bunch of kids together, guys that a lot of testosterone flowing on a weekend, and you're going to go racing factory bikes, and you're doing what every kid in the whole world wants to be doing, and you're being a part of this, you're going to do some crazy shit. You're just going to do some crazy things are going to happen.
Yeah. But once you got to live, I mean, there was a lot of crazy shit going on away from the racetrack, but was there a lot of crazy shit going on at the track? I mean, it was two separate things. I mean, once you got to the racetrack, it was business, and it was serious, and you did what you had to do? Or was there some element of craziness?
Well, no, it was definitely more serious, no question. Once you get it Sunday morning, yeah, everything's more serious. But there still was an element of wildness and boys being boys and boys hanging out, and there was just always that element of surprise. You never know. Guys, like I said, guys like Weinert and Gary Semix, Steve Stackwell, these guys, Tripes, Pomeroy especially, these guys were out there, man. Mosier, another top rider that was out there doing crazy stuff. I mean, you would never know from weekend to weekend which one of these guys was going to be more off the wall than the other guy.
What was the single craziest thing you ever saw? Any one of those? You don't need to mention the name if you want to stay anonymous.
You know what? I can't even pinpoint it. There was so many things that I can't remember all the crazy things. I just know that every one of these guys had their moment of glory as far as being crazy and doing dumb stuff at the track, or crazy stuff, whether it be in a rental car, or whether it be with a groupie at the hotel or a groupie at the track. Every top guy back in the day had their moment of glory when it comes to being crazy. I couldn't pinpoint one thing. There's no way I could.
If kind of going back to something you addressed earlier on when you were doing the production bike, factory bike, and you had the FMF bike. A lot of guys to this day will go, oh, well, if only I had a factory bike, I could have just been whatever. I could have been a champion too. Was there a huge difference between the good factory bikes and a good production bike? I mean, was it night and day?
Night and day, heads and tails. A good factory bike was so much better. I mean, you can't compete. You could not compete against one. If you didn't have a factory bike back in the day, the best you could hope for was being the first guy to be the first guy after all the factory bikes, because you couldn't compete with them. They were that much better. Every way. Suspension, motor, just unbelievable better.
But if Joe Schmo jumped on the factory bike, would he have been able to use that difference and be able to win?
Some guys could, absolutely. There was a lot of good guys that weren't factory riders that did really well, and those guys, if you put one of those guys on a factory bike, you're going to see a new national champion maybe. But there was so many good guys, and there were so many factory riders that the factories didn't really have to step outside the box too far to find a good rider, and they weren't forced to. Whereas I think nowadays they have to kind of step out of the box. There's not that many factory riders nowadays, and like there was back in my day.
Well, why is that? Why are there less riders now? Why were there so many back then?
Well, To be honest with you, I don't think the sport is as big as it was back in the day. I mean, look at how many spectators were at the Nationals and at Trans Ams and at Supercrosses. I mean, we're talking crazy amount of people at the USGPs. I mean, people could get closer to the tracks and closer to their heroes. They could go right into the pits and be as close to their heroes as you and I are right now. And they could be this close to the track. Now you can't do that. It was really popular back in the day, and it's dropped off. You know, and you could attribute it to the cost of motorcycles, the expense of getting to the races nowadays. I think the biggest thing though is the cost of a motorcycle. The cost of a motorcycle is $10,000. You know, by the time the dust clears, and that's hard for a kid to do. Back in the day, we were spending $1,500, $700 on an Elsinore back in '73. You know, I know it's all relative, but still $700 or $800 for a motorcycle back in '73, '74 is a lot easier to swallow than $10,000 right now. That's a lot of money for a motorcycle. The upkeep, the maintenance, especially the four-stroke thing. I'd like to see the sport go back to two strokes.